NBC's Vaughn Hilliard is back with us, and joining us, Amy Parnes, senior political correspondent at The Hill, and Mark McKinnon, former advisor to George W. Bush and John McCain. So, Amy, I'll start with you. The call was really extraordinary to listen to. They are clearly trying to urge donors to stay put. They're trying aggressively to claim that the debate was a one-off. At one point, Jen O'Malley Dillon said he's probably healthier than any of us. And yet donors that I spoke to came away feeling pretty skeptical.
The donors that I spoke to felt the same way, Katie, and I don't think that call did anything to assuage worries. If anything, donors came out of that call a little more concerned. They know what's at stake here. A lot of them said, you know, we have poured our hearts and souls into this campaign. This is not where we wanted to be right now. This is not just one debate. You can't compare what happened on Thursday night to 2012 with Barack Obama's performance. It's a very different thing. And the worry continues to be very real. And I think that they're waiting for the next round of polls to come in. If the polls show that Donald Trump is widening his lead, I think the consternation will continue to grow.
Well, they tried to message against that, Mark. At one point, Jen O'Malley Dillon, or not her, but another one of the aides, talked about how the media narrative around Joe Biden's performance in the debate and his health has been overblown. The donor that I spoke with called that very Trumpian, to blame a dip in polling that could be to come on the media and to say that we're the ones that are talking about the health as if people don't have eyes and ears and can't see it for themselves. The situation, though, according to Democrats, is pretty fraught. I mean, these are donors that want Joe Biden to win. They want a Democrat to win. They're very much against Donald Trump. But there is a feeling amongst a lot of people that he's no longer the best candidate. At the same time, Mark, there was a lot of worry about what an open convention might do to the party and do to the election.
Well, listen, I think it's pretty clear to anybody that if Joe Biden runs, he's going to lose. And so, yes, the other scenarios are messy. They're fraught with complications, but it would be exciting. It'd be dramatic and democratic. But listen, the people that are criticizing the debate performance and the staff around Joe Biden are not Joe Biden's enemies or opponents. They're his supporters. These are people who are really worried about the election. And the part of the problem I see is that with the decision yesterday, a lot of Biden core supporters around him are saying, oh, we just have to elevate the threat. We just have to make it clear how great this threat is. People know the threat. And that's the reason they're worried about Biden, is because they don't think Biden can beat Trump. He was behind before the debate. People tuned in to say, oh, does he really look 80? And guess what? He looked 90. So that's the problem. And people know it's not a one-off. And now we're reading stories contrary to what Jen O'Malley Dillon said. It's not overblown. We're now learning that the staff has been hiding from us and shielding the president because of their concerns about his stamina and his vitality, not ours.
Well, given those allegations, is the campaign going to start putting him out more? I know he was out yesterday, but he was on prompter speaking for 5 minutes, didn't take any questions. Is, Amy, the campaign going to have Biden sit down for news interviews? Not just one, but maybe multiple. Is he going to have him? Are they going to have him come out at the the podium for the daily news conferences at the White House? Is he going to sit with an antagonistic podcaster? What are they planning on doing to dispel this? Because so far we've only seen President Biden on teleprompter.
Yeah, and last night was a perfect example of what happened. He came out, spoke to the press for 4.5 minutes, and then didn't take questions. But I talked to strategists right after who said, why? That was a perfect opportunity for him to say, let me take a few questions. Let's start this game again. Let me prove to you guys that I can do this in real time. And so I think there are discussions. I've spoken to a number of people who tell me there are discussions about maybe doing a town hall, more press conferences. They're trying to open him up a bit. But the past few days have not served him well. Going into Camp David, doing this photo shoot, coming out yesterday, not speaking to the press, not speaking in real time, taking questions. These are moments that are hurting him. Every day that goes by that he's not doing all of these things is hurting him. And so he needs to pivot very quickly is what I'm hearing.
Let me push back for a second, Mark. And how cognizant is the American public of when Joe Biden's on prompter and off prompter? I know we're talking about, well, he was much more in control. He was much stronger in rally. He's been much stronger since the debate when we've seen him. But he's been on prompter. Does the American public really know when he's on prompter and when he's off prompter?
No, but Katie, I think that they're fully cognizant of the fact that he's being managed, and that this debate showed that what happens to Joe Biden when there's no net. There, they knew that he wasn't reading from a teleprompter, and that's what they wanted to see. They wanted to have their confidence reestablished that Joe Biden was up to the job, and he didn't do it. He wasn't up to the job, and he showed that he wasn't, that he can't do it without a teleprompter, and that's the problem. And listen, Sunday, the day after the debate, this is classically where, Bill Clinton went on 60 Minutes, or you'd have a chance to push back. And what did they do? A Vanity Fair photo shoot with Annie Leibovitz. Boy.
All right, pregnant pause there. Vaughn, does the Donald Trump team anticipate that Joe Biden might not be the man that he's running against?
They would like him to stay in that position. I was talking to Chris LaSavina, senior advisor to Donald Trump, and he said the only person that would be able to make that call within the Democratic Party is Joe Biden himself. What they're pressing is that Joe Biden's not going to make that decision.
Do they want to? Are they more afraid of somebody else, or how are they feeling about the potential for somebody else?
I think it's a question of who is that other person, because they have pushed Donald Trump on his own social media over the last days, has pushed the idea that any other Democrat that were to replace Joe Biden is lower than Joe Biden in the polls in a head-to-head matchup. That's at least the idea of the polling that they are pushing here. And for Donald Trump, he effectively has an opponent now who he has repeatedly over the last year suggested that he is being controlled by the Obamas and Democratic Party, but not actually himself. And so if Joe Biden wants to, and the campaign wants to move on from this narrative, there's one person who is not going to let him do that, and it is Donald Trump. He is eager to continue to make that message over these next 4
Your
months.
phone started ringing, and I wondered if it was a source, but it just said potential spam, so I think we could not worry about that. Do they think that Joe Biden, do they believe that Joe Biden is beatable? Because the Biden team says that they're the only ones that can beat Donald Trump. Do they believe, you heard Mark a moment ago saying that Joe Biden will lose. How confident is the Trump campaign?
If we go, I mean this. I think that they're saying this, and I believe them on this front, that they are very confident. If they go back to Arizona, go back to Georgia, right? It was 11,000 votes in Arizona. It was 10,000 votes in Georgia.
Very close.
They believe that, just a few more independents to switch over, galvanize some Trump supporters that didn't even vote in 2020 and 2016. They believe that base support alone will be able to put them over the top here. And, the alternatives, right? You can throw out a Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan. You can throw out a Josh Shapiro, Pennsylvania, right? Those are battleground states that if those governors were to potentially be added to the ticket, or a Raphael Warnock, right, and senator from Georgia, potentially you could, as the Democrats, win those states. And so for the Trump team right now, at least the matchup that they have, they feel very comfortable and confident about it.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.